Today we're going to talk about purposeful and meaningful activities, what this type of an activity is, why this type of an activity is important for brain rewiring, and tips on how to start incorporating purposeful and meaningful activities into your rehab program. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset in the context of neurologic injury, with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take ownership of your rehab program and ultimately reach your highest maximum potential. And with all that said, today we're going to talk about neuroplasticity, which is just a fancy way of kind of saying how the brain reorganizes after damage to the brain, and why a critical component to that rewiring process should include purposeful and meaningful activities. So first, purposeful and meaningful, there are two different definitions, but they are interrelated. So a purposeful activity is a goal-directed use of time, energy, or attention that involves a person's active participation. Now, my definition of a meaningful activity is a use of time where you feel like a contributor, it improves your self-worth, and gives you a sense of satisfaction. Basically, anything that revs you up and gets you out of bed in the morning. Now, the reason I took the time to define those two things is because it's really going to be important once we get through this whole video when we get to tips on how to incorporate these types of activities into your neuro rehab program. So definitely stay to the end of this video. So now, why are purposeful and meaningful activities important in the context of neurologic injury? Well, first and foremost, purposeful and meaningful activities are fundamental for every human's health and well-being. And I firmly believe that overall health and well-being is 80% of neuro rehab, meaning that apart from exercises to regain a movement, being in general good health is absolutely critical. The other reason these types of activities are important is because there is growing evidence that shows when an activity is attached to a reward, such as food, the parts of our brain that are responsible for focus and attention seem to be more active. So now that we know what these are and why they're important, let's talk about ways that you can incorporate purposeful and meaningful activities into your daily routine to help maximize your brain's ability to rewire around the particular movements that you want to restore. Now, this is going to be very specific to the individual, to each one of you. So I would say a good starting point is to think about activities in your life, either currently that you're doing or activities that you maybe did in your past or even pre-stroke that really gave you that sense that I stated earlier of like getting out of bed in the morning, those things that really got you excited where you kind of lost track of time. Now, if you sit down and you think about that question and you're in a place right now where you feel like your life has no purpose and no meaning, which is really common after a stroke or a brain injury where your life has been turned upside down, maybe you're not working, and maybe that was where you gained your purpose and your meaning, I would say that a starting point for you would be to sit down and see how you can reframe that. Because the reality is, and I have gained this belief over years and years of working with people that have had disabilities, that physical ability is not the only thing that brings purpose and meaning to life. And there is a way to take the things that you enjoy and that give you that sense of purpose and apply them to your life right now, even in the context or the setting of stroke. So for those of you that, again, have that sense where you're in that place right now, so I'd say for you, sit down and really spend some time kind of evaluating that question and seeing if there's a way you can just reframe your big picture overall life right now as far as getting to that point where you are a little bit more accepting of where you're at currently, because I really do think that's a valuable place to start. Now, for those of you that your job gave you purpose and meaning, But maybe in your younger days or your younger years, you really enjoyed painting or building stuff or fixing your car or cleaning, folding laundry. All of those are things that give different people purpose and meaning. And those are the things that you want to focus on. What are the things that made you feel really good about yourself? And maybe for you, once you actually start doing this reflecting on maybe things, hobbies that you used to enjoy when you were younger, and then kind of as work and family got in the mix, you started doing them less and less. Maybe you can kind of even reframe your stroke rehab as like this great opportunity where you can start doing some of those things again that maybe you didn't have time to do before your stroke because either you were working too much or you had a lot of other obligations that maybe you can't do now. So maybe that's just a way to reframe your rehab in general. And then one last thing I want to say about kind of doing this self-reflection and figuring out what gives your life purpose and meaning. Even if you do all of that and you still feel like your life has no purpose and your life has no meaning, well, remember the studies I talked about where when a stimuli was associated or attached to a meaningful activity, those focus and attention areas lit up? Well, in some of those studies, that meaningful thing was food, because at the very foundation of all of us, eating is essential for our survival. So although that's doesn't sound like fun for some people, at the very least, eating could be that purposeful and meaningful activity. So maybe that's the one you latch onto for now, but get a vision in your head, because next we're going to talk about how you implement that purposeful or meaningful activity. But if none of that else works, if you don't feel like you enjoy painting or knitting or cleaning or washing your car, none of that works, again, eating, meaningful for all humans on this earth. So now from that point, and this is going to be very generalized, because for some of you it could be folding laundry, for some of you it could be painting, for some of you it could be cooking. But I'm going to give kind of like a framework of how I approach this with patients, because we always have this conversation as to what gives that person in front of me their life purpose and meaning, and we problem solve together as to how we can use this activity to get that brain rewiring around the movements that you are hoping to restore. So you have the activity in your head. Now I say try and get it down to its smallest, simplest form. So just some examples. If you enjoyed painting or you enjoyed drawing, find a way to either get crayons or markers or something maybe where you don't have to put a lot of pressure down to actually make it appear on paper, and strap that marker or whatever to your hand. The other thing that might work for you is to use digital art to maybe have that outlet that you can actually just move the mouse and you can draw on your computer to start. Remember, we're just trying to tap into something that you enjoy that'll get you out of bed in the morning, and it's just a starting point. Now, for those of you maybe that art was your profession and you were extremely high level, I would say kind of take your expectations down a few notches, and I promise you it will pay off in dividends. You can find a way to enjoy that activity that you used to enjoy, even though you're not as good at it as you used to be. Another example that came up recently was someone who played the guitar. So we spent some time just figuring out how to strap the guitar to his body and how to kind of set his fingers up. And he taught me probably more than I taught him, but I was kind of there just as an outside observer as we were trying to figure this out, helping him to figure out ways to set his body up so that he could make it a little bit easier to produce that sound. Now, his job was to get over that perfectionism of wanting to be able to play the guitar how he had played it before his stroke, which he was able to do. And so that is accomplishing two things. And I will say he is making arm progress 1000% because he started playing that guitar. Now let's take cooking, because cooking is huge for a lot of of people, a lot of my patients, that's something that really gave their life purpose and meaning. There are a ton of ways to break things down. But again, you just have to lower your expectations of what you're capable of doing right now so you can put those building blocks in place. Start with foods that you don't really need to do a lot of fine cutting with. Or maybe someone cuts the food for you and you do the prep work after that's done. Now, when it comes to cooking, there is a lot of ways to do everything with your uninvolved hand. So let's take this all the way back to the whole purpose of this video was how to use purposeful activities to restore or rewire your brain around the movements that you want to do. And obviously you're trying to restore movements on your involved arm. So you could compensate with your other arm, but the purpose of cooking in this context is trying to be creative and find ways to make the activities easy enough so that you can do it with your involved hand. Now, I do get this comment a lot, so I think this is a perfect place to bring it up. Some people who say, my arm is dead. There's no movement in my arm at all. And that definitely adds an additional challenge. And in that case, I would say if you have family support, the starting point would be to have someone maybe hold that arm for you and guide it a little bit as you're going through the motions of preparing that meal. So that's just another way that you can set up a purposeful and meaningful activity even in the very early stages. And then the last example that came up recently that I worked on with a patient is work. He loved his job, and his job relied heavily on the computer. So we didn't spend a lot of time on this, but we did spend a little time just figuring out how to set his computer up and set everything up so that he could do that thing that gave his life purpose and meaning, and then slowly started to find ways to incorporate his involved arm. So those are just a few examples of things that you can try, and I can't stress it enough. I know I've said it a few times in this video, but your life does have purpose. It does have meaning despite not being able to do things physically. You just have to take the time to sit down and explore those things that maybe you haven't done in years. And then that is it for this video. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you're new to this channel and you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I will see you in the next video.